Uvodno ću par riječi reći na hrvatskom zašto toliko vremena posvećujemo ekonomskim temama. Nije slučajno. Uvjereni smo, ja sam uvjeren, tu sam već preko 30 godina, pratim razvoj Hrvatske od samog početka 90-ih. Nismo, nažalost, kao zemlja stvorili uspješan model upravljanja koji će dozvoliti našim ljudima, pa i mladima, vama, pravednu mogućnost da uspijete ovdje, nažalost. Ima jako puno razloga za to. Međutim, mislim da je jedan od glavnih što naši vodeći političari jednostavno ne razumiju osnovna pravila ekonomije, pa i kao moderan svijet, kako moderan svijet funkcionira, nažalost. I to opća javnost, birači, jako sporo shvaćaju. Dakle, vide, svaki ima u obitelji, u široj rodbini slučajeve ljudi koji su otišli iz Hrvatske. I mislim da je jako važno za Domovinski pokret kao novu stranku da jako ozbiljno pristupi ovoj tematici. Ako ne nudimo rješenja za ekonomske probleme, neće biti dovoljno naše domoljublje, niti poštovanje prema Domovinskom ratu, prema hrvatskoj povijesti, kulturi i slično. Neće biti dovoljno. Moramo ponuditi rješenja za konkretne probleme naših ljudi. Moramo. I ako smo stvarno domoljubi, moramo se zalagati za slobodnu ekonomiju. Dakle, često čujem, otkad sam u javnoj sferi, u politici, da Hrvatska je mala, ranjiva zemlja, jednostavno bez jake države, miješanje države, puno javnih poduzeća, takozvane strateške kompanije koji moraju biti u vlasništvu države, ne možemo se zaštititi od globalnih aktera, od konkurencije. Ja to ne prihvaćam. Dakle, ja mislim da je to opravdanje za korupciju, otvara veliki prostor, to vidimo ne samo u INA-i sad, nego u drugim javnim poduzećima, što se događa jer je prevelik prostor za zloupotrebu položaja, nažalost. Dakle, ako smo stvarno domoljubi i stalo nam je i želimo da nam unuci i djeca ostaju u Hrvatskoj, moramo se zalagati za slobodnu trgovinu. Ne da država, štiti neke lance u odnosu na strane kompanije koje ovdje nude svoje usluge. Na primjer, to je često jedan refleks koji mnogi nude, da treba država nešto učiniti da ovi strani lanci ne rastu i tako uzimaju udjel tržišta od hrvatskih kompanija. To je krivi način razmišljanja. Naše najbolje kompanije koje su izrasle zapravo iz ničega, mnoge su iz IT sektora, su globalno konkurentne kompanije. Dakle, nama je u strateškom interesu da slobodna trgovina i dalje bude taj okvir u kojem će se Hrvatska razvijati. Dakle, moramo ozbiljno pristupiti, kažem, ovim temama i shvatiti da država ne stvara bogatstva, država kao takva, javni sektor, nego to radi realni privatni sektor. Politika prema svojim prioritetima uzima iz onoga što se stvara u gospodarstvu, u jednoj zemlji i onda raspodjeljuje kako misli je najbolje. Dakle, Plenković sad nudi mjere od 21 milijardi dolara kuna kao da je on stvorio nešto i sad će on pomagati ljudima. Ne, on ne stvara ništa. Niti razumije, nažalost, niti razumije kako se stvara bogatstvo, materijalno bogatstvo. i svi plaćamo cijenu za to, nego reagira, stvara privid da nešto čini i sa našim novcima raspolaže i dijeli ili intervenira u tržište, smanjuje cijene nekih proizvoda. Znamo da to isto košta, bit će posljedica i takvih mjera. Već u nekim manjim sredinama nedostaju na policama neki proizvodi jer ne možemo vječno prkositi ekonomskim pravilima. Ne možemo prkositi. Dakle, ovo što govorim nije samo moje osobno zapažanje, nego brojke potvrđuje. Dakle, mi kao narod nestajemo, ljudi odlaze, glasuju s nogama, dakle, pokazuju što misle o Hrvatskoj i, nažalost, idu tražiti sreću u inozemstvo, nažalost. I to je glavnim dijelom zbog nesposobnosti naših političara, nažalost. I oni ne žele da se to promijeni. Da se razumijemo, oni žele držati i dalje veliki broj poduzeća u svojim rukama jer tako kadroviraju, tako imaju kontrolu nad velikim sredstvima i slično. Dakle, ako ne nametnemo svoju agendu i objasnimo ljudima o čemu se radi i zašto su ulozi tako visoki, nećemo uspjeti. Zato ulažem veliki osobni napor, ali sa kolegama koji izdvajaju vrijeme da ozbiljno razgovaramo o ovim temama, jer nažalost, i druge zemlje u srednjoj i istočnoj Europi koje su imale komunizam idu puno brže naprijed u odnosu na Hrvatsku. Idu naprijed. Dakle, kad Plenković se hvali sa rastom BDP-a i slično sa nekim pokazateljima, uvijek se mora postaviti pitanje u odnosu na što. Jer jednostavno ako rastemo, činjenica jest da ne rastemo dovoljno brzo kad gledamo jednu Poljsku ili Češku ili druge zemlje. Dakle, gubimo utrku. Jer nalazimo se u konkurentskom okruženju, dame i gospodo. Dakle, ljudi mogu birati gdje će tražiti sreću. Evo, Ivan Perković bio je moderator na prvom panelu u ponedjeljak, rođen je u Splitu, evo ga tu s nama, živi i radi kao bankar u Poljskoj, u Varšavi, sa svojom obitelji. Nije u Splitu. Vjerojatno bi mu bilo lakše i ljepše gdje je odrasao stvarati obitelj, ali nalazi se u Poljskoj. I takvih je još više po Njemačkoj, Irskoj i slično. So I'll switch back to English so we can continue the discussion. I thought it was important just initially to explain to our Croatian audience why we dedicate so much time and attention to economics. Because culture is perhaps most important, but if we don't, as a party, offer policy solutions for economic problems, we will not succeed. I think Robin was correct. Much has been said, and I don't want to be repetitive. I do want to mention the issue of property rights and how important this is. I don't think our nation, especially politicians, realize the importance of this issue and what the costs are if a country gets a bad reputation on property rights. So this is an index. Alex mentioned several. I would encourage you to look at the Fraser Institute, the Canadian think tank that Alex is involved with, and also Heritage. There's others that have very good information. This is a index. It's called the International Property Rights Index, issued by the Property Rights Alliance. And I was looking at this this morning just to see where Croatia is, because this is a key indicator how business-friendly a country is. So Croatia is, Finland is number one. Finland, Singapore, Switzerland. Croatia is number 65, just ahead of Greece, but behind countries like Rwanda, Morocco, Botswana, Jamaica, India, Montenegro, Azerbaijan, Ghana, Trinidad and Tobago, Armenia, Bulgaria. They're ahead of us. They score better than Croatia. Why is this important? I'll just illustrate this through a story I'm familiar with, a case, a real investment case. A very big Norwegian investment fund participated in a tender that was organized by the island of Hvar. So I'm sure you are familiar how beautiful Hvar is. And the local authorities on Hvar issued a tender for a cove, an uvala, to be developed for tourism. And this Norwegian fund offered, I believe, 5 million euro to purchase this land. And what happened subsequently is that after this deal had been consumed, they had paid the money. This was a public offering. The Croatian state-run company Hrvatske šume, the forestry company, made a claim that part of this land belongs to the company. It couldn't, in other words, it shouldn't have been sold without their permission. So there was a claim to part of this land. And then what ensued was litigation between the local authority and a Croatian state-held company on who owns the land. And in other words, to make this story short, the Norwegian fund has not done anything with this property. They want to, they will probably never develop a resort on Hvar. And because of their global reach, their executives have shared their experience with other fund managers. And then when I was working with the Prime Minister, we would repeatedly hear ABC, anything but Croatia, because these things have serious consequences. They have serious consequences. And nothing Plenković says can fix that. So we have to realize this, that property rights and rule of law are essential, We can send, our ministers around the world selling Croatia. It's not a difficult sell, in my opinion. Everyone who comes and visits Croatia, especially Dalmatia, easily sees the beauty of this country and the fact that our ancestors, people who lived long before us, had very good taste in architecture. We have beautiful cities everywhere in our country, along the Dalmatian coast, especially here in Split, but on the islands. So every foreigner coming easily sees this, quickly sees this. It's not a difficult sell for our government to say, come to Croatia. The problem is, below the surface, the reality is very messy. It's extremely messy and complicated. And many investors lose money and a lot of time. In today's world, if you lose 5 years in litigation just so you can start building on a property that you own, this causes lots of grief and frustration. So that's the environment we're dealing with. We have capital that can go wherever it pleases. It doesn't have to come to Croatia. It can go elsewhere. It can go to Serbia. It can go to Montenegro. It can go to Slovenia or further east. And we must provide coherent policy solutions to address this. Policy solutions that make sense, that we can communicate to the public. That's why what the Leadership Institute was discussing on Monday is so important. We can have the best ideas. What we've discussed today is very important. I think they're sound principles that we need to communicate. But if we don't do this well, in a sophisticated way, in an effective way, we won't do well in elections. We have to communicate this in an effective way to average voters. So I want to just conclude, so we have time for discussion, by mentioning Just a few brief things regarding myths that exist about today's economy. And here in Croatia, we have the introduction of the euro that will begin in January. I'm convinced that Croatia is not ready for this. We have not reformed the economy in a way that we can really benefit from this common currency. We have not. So in a way, Plenković is selling this as a political success, as one more task that he's accomplished. But in fact, what's necessary is for him to implement real structural reforms, to make government smaller, in order for Croatia to be competitive. That's what will give people jobs and the opportunity to stay here, not the euro. The euro, in fact, I hope I'm wrong, but in fact could make things more difficult. We will certainly lose freedom in developing our own tax and fiscal policy. So we will be under pressure from powers outside of our country, first and foremost Germany, but other places which will be insisting that we have to harmonize our fiscal and tax policy since joining the euro. And that will make our sovereignty much more limited. And as Robin said correctly, this is permanent. Once you join the euro, you never go back to the kuna. It's a permanent decision that I'm afraid was not discussed properly in the public square here in Croatia. That's how many times these decisions are made. Plenković's final argument was that this was decided in 2013 when Croatia joined the European Union because we had already agreed to this as a future measure. So there's no need to discuss it because we've already decided. I don't remember any serious debate in 2013 about the benefits or risks of joining the euro. No one was mentioning this. So that's how politics works. So, one of the legacies of communism is that there's a great deal of resentment among people. Resentment means it's a very negative emotion. People who blame others for their own situation. You know, the tycoons are an easy target, or others who have done. And I'm not justifying Croatian tycoons. Many of them, Alex was mentioning Argentina and other cases where there was crony privatization going on. And this was the case here as well. Soft loans, money going around to cronies so they could buy up companies. That's unfortunately what happened in Croatia in the 90s. And that's a great injustice. I know many Croats who came from abroad, like myself, they wanted to invest their hard-earned money in companies that were for sale, and it was almost impossible. So the communists were able to control this process. But aside from that, 30 years later, we have to address this question: why is there so much resentment or skepticism towards the free economy? And I think one of the reasons is that in socialism, when everything was gray and leveled and there weren't obvious, gaps between the wealthy and the poor, people tend to, prefer that situation where we're all more or less the same. And that's where the arguments from the left are coming. They're interested in equality of outcomes. Equality of outcomes. Conservatives are interested in equal opportunity. Everyone gets a fair chance to succeed. That's what we're interested in. Not in equal outcomes. In other words, that everyone should have more or less the same income or similar income. That's the wrong way of looking at it. I don't mind that Luka Modric, I can't play soccer like Luka Modric. I don't mind. I don't resent that. I like Luka Modric. He's someone I admire. And I don't resent that he's making millions of euro playing soccer. He's making a lot more money than, heart surgeons in Spain or heart surgeons here in Croatia. But that's the reality of the market system. And he worked very hard to get to this level. No one gave this as a gift to Luka Modric. He worked very hard. And there shouldn't be any resentment. But in Croatia, I find often in conversations a great deal of bitterness and resentment towards, the wealthy or those who are in charge. And many times, like I said, they are corrupt. But if we don't try to fix this system and make it possible for everyone to succeed, we will continue to fail as a country. We will continue to fail. That's the bitter truth. Regarding the euro, I just wanted to say that the control of the money supply is something in the hands of the state. So it's a very powerful tool for governments to impact the real economy through monetary policy. This can be abused. If central bankers get it wrong, things go very badly. But what experience has shown is these policies of very low interest rates that tend to inflate property prices, asset prices, and so on, tend to largely favor the wealthy, already those who are wealthy, and not the young, not you, and not the lower classes. But the fact that we've given up our own currency, the little sovereignty we had, monetary sovereignty, is gone now, is gone. Many economists say, well, our economy was anyway very much linked to the Eurozone, so there wasn't really, in the true sense, monetary sovereignty. But the little sovereignty we had up until now will be gone next year, forever. There's also been this, as a Catholic, I will say, this critique of the free economy and capitalism, let's say, because it tends to lead to consumerism. In other words, this view that the purpose of life is to produce and consume material things, right? So that's why, shopping centers must be open on Sundays as well, because what would people do? They have to be able to, go out with their families and do some shopping if they'd like, Now, I mention this because in one of the arguments from the liberals is that, well, in communism, shops weren't open on Sunday, so you're going back. That's the way it was in communism. But I would say this, that we must take human nature into account. And our view is that we are more than Homo economicus. We are more than just producers and consumers. We have an immortal soul. In many of these statistics and debates, the human person is forgotten. And this is something that John Paul II spoke about frequently when he discussed the reality after the collapse of communism. We were liberated as nations, but he was concerned that this ideology coming from the West was a new kind of slavery, this kind of culture that, like I said, glorifies consuming, that with the internet has become very shallow. It's very, very shallow, this culture we live in. So we have to take that into account. If we get the economics right, which I hope Domovinski Pokret will contribute, that we will move the country more in this direction. In the end, even if we achieve GDP growth of 5–6%, even if we become a new European tiger, to use that term, and attract foreign investment, if we lose our culture, if we lose our souls, so to speak, we will not succeed. So we have to get the economy right, but we also have to keep in mind that the culture in the end is what counts most. We have to provide the opportunities for people to provide for themselves and their families. We know that socialism doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work. But these ideas linger. They're like a virus. You know, they move from party to party, from left to right. I'm afraid most of the politicians sitting in our parliament, you know, believe in socialism, believe that government knows best. That's their intuition, that the experts know best. We should trust Plenković. We should trust the finance minister. But my message is another one. We shouldn't trust these people because experience has shown that they're completely incompetent. And until we start moving the country in a different direction and getting our people back here, living in Croatia, I'm afraid there won't be much positive change. So that's something to think about. Like I said, we have to have a holistic approach to these issues. This is where I depart from many of our libertarian friends who have kind of a philosophical assumption that moral relativism is correct, and there's no such thing as objective moral truth. That is nonsense and false. And so we must not yield on these deeper questions. But again, we have to get sound economics in the public debate. And that's part of your responsibility as well. Okay, thank you.